Hi, my name is Aimee Sunseri. I am the winemaker for New Clairvaux Vineyard. And I just want to thank you for having us at your special holiday gala. I have the blessed privilege of working with the brothers at the Abbey of New Clairvaux. They're an amazing group of gentlemen, and I just can't wait to share our product with you. Don't know if you guys have heard of us. We're in a small town called Vina, California, and it's just north of Chico. And we are grower producers. My dad, the Sunseri family, and the brothers basically make these wines. My family, I'm actually a 5th generation winemaker. My dad is a 5th generation grape grower. And he and his family stem out of Napa. He has a vineyard there, as well as a vineyard in Vina with the brothers that have a vineyard in Vina as well. So we have 3 sources of fruit, and we are going to taste wines tonight with the Explorer Pack. Some of you guys might have these wines with you. One of them, actually 2 of them, is from the St. James block. That is the Abbey's vineyard. And then one of them comes from our Poor Souls block, and that's my dad's vineyard in Vina. And we have some unusual varieties. We call this an Explorer Pack because we assume that you are pretty adventurous. And for the very first one, oh, and by the way, if you don't have these wines, don't feel bad. I'm not going to judge. I can't even see you. I hope you have a beverage in your hand, something that you love, something that you can enjoy. And what I'm going to mix in with this tasting, which I thought would be really fun, is how I do a food pairing with wines. And so a lot of this information is just going to be general information. And so I thought that would really help connect and give you something different than just these wines itself. Well, one of my passions is cooking, and so I've been playing around with things, and I have some really great tips and tricks on how to do food pairing. So the wines in the pack, we have, for those adventurous people, the Explorer Pack. We have an Acertico, which I'm sure you're asking yourself, is that a grape? Is it a wine? It is a grape. It is a Greek variety. And actually, New Clairvaux is the very first in the United States to grow and produce this variety in particular. And a lot of people actually seek us out because of that. It's one of our claim to fames. And then we also have a Barbera. This is from Italy. Barbera, famous in Northern California. If you've ever had wines in Amador or Lodi, the Sierra foothills, all of those regions, very famous for Barbera. Great growing regions on their own. And Vina can hold its own to all of them. So I think you guys will like that one. And then last but not least, we have Tempranillo going all the way to Spain. And Tempranillo is got a really special connection to New Clairvaux. I'll tell you a story about that when we taste that wine. So let's start off. I'm going to explain how I do this food pairing. So what I do is I break out all the elements in a dish. So we start with the acidity. Acid's really common in a dish. It can be from lemons, limes, vinegars, all the way to tomatoes and just tart fruits like kiwis or anything with that acidity. And so what I use to replicate the acidity is I just have like a simple lemon slice. And then I'll have a small dish of salt because we all love a little bit of salt in our dish. And so that will help me. What I do is I taste my wine and I taste the element and I go back and forth and I see which one works for it. So continuing on with all my elements here, I have for our fat, to represent the fat in a dish, I have some olive oil. And then sweetness, really important. A lot of our foods, we're very attracted to sweet foods. Sweetness is sugar, just simply a little bit of sugar. And then I love spicy foods. I don't know about you guys, but I love spice in my food. So I use a little bit of sriracha. You can use hot sauce or anything hot. You can even, I don't know, slice up a jalapeno and maybe see how that compares. That's a little spicy though. And then last but not least, this one needs a little bit of explanation. This is a mushroom. And it's not a raw mushroom. This is actually a cooked mushroom. And what I do is I take a raw mushroom. I know it sounds really simple, but I just toss it in my microwave. I cook it for about 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, depending on how big it is. And as soon as you open your microwave door, you can smell this. It's actually a beautiful smell, but that cooked mushroom, that savory umami aroma. And so that's what I'm trying to capture by using a mushroom, is to get that umami flavor, which is another very important part of a lot of our foods. And so I simply pour the wine. So we're going to start with the Certico. So I'm going to jump a little bit back and forth because I've got a great story for a Certico. This is indigenous to a tiny little island in Greece called Santorini, and this island is very windy. And they've been growing, as I said, indigenous. So they've been growing this on this island. This is the mecca of a Certico, where it's from. And when they first planted it, most people did head train vines, but because it was so windy, they just kept everything low. And the wind would just naturally kind of whip the canes around. And so they started to braid these baskets. They kind of look like big eagle's nests or bird's nest baskets sitting on the ground of a grapevine. And it was a very interesting way they grew these grapes, and they only do it in Santorini, and they're called coloras, and they're beautiful. So if you ever look up coloras, and you'll see how they braid this vine into this beautiful basket, and that's how they grow them. No stakes, no trellis, no wires. It's just this really cool basket sitting on the ground. And so that is Santorini. That's how they grow their Certico. This grape, on its flavor profiles, it's known to be a monster in acidity. So it's just got a lot of acid to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and start with color. So I'm a little bit of a cork dork, and so what we do is we look at the color, and the color, interestingly, like a lot of things, observation, just simple observation, you can tell a lot about something. So with a white wine, this wine, I don't know if you can tell, it is almost like water. It is very, very clear, and it's just got a hint of yellow. Some white wines can be more golden and kind of dark and kind of lean. If you're drinking a wine like that, you could almost guarantee, just by the color, you could tell if it's been exposed to oak or oak barrels at all. Because when it's steeped in the oak, it literally pulls out the color of the wood, and it will just get naturally darker. Now this one is as light as water, and so you know, and I know because I made it, that it's 100% stainless steel, fermented, and we bottled it super young, and it never touched any oak ever. So anyway, something you can see just by the color. Now I'm going to smell it. So this wine's it's got a really great intensity. I get limes and lemons. I'm going to go ahead and taste, and then this is kind of where the food pairing comes into play. Wow, it is super acidic. I said it was like a monster of acidity. My mouth is just salivating here. Beautiful. It's got limes, lemons, very tart, crisp, very lean, dry. Now, when the food pairing, because it's got acidity, so there's two elements that is very wine loving. One of them, and they're twins, by the way. One of them is when you have acidity in your food and acidity in your wine. Those two things love each other, because what it will do is if your food is more acidic than your wine will actually taste sweeter, it will taste fruitier, and what's this other element that it does? I forget what it says. It's less bitter, I guess. So anyways, when I did this little taste test with each of these wines before, so the acidity, that one really worked with this wine. And if you want to impress somebody or just get a reaction, find a really acidic wine and a lemon and ask them to taste the wine first, then taste the lemon, then taste the wine again, and see if it changed their perspective of that wine, and you will be shocked how often it happens. And it needs to happen with something really acidic and dry. It's like the acidity in the plate just opens up the wine. The other thing that is an element that really likes each other, and it doesn't have to do with this wine, is the sweetness element, the sugar. So sweet, unfortunately, if things are too sweet, you can never have a dish sweeter than the wine. The key will be to always have the wine a little more sweet than the dish. But you can never, always have to have sweet with sweet. If you have sweet with dry, the sweetness in a dish will make the wine taste drier. It will make it taste more bitter. It will make it taste more watery. It will do all these things to it that you really don't want to do to your wine. And so if you have something really sweet, like a dessert, the key with desserts is pair it with a dessert wine. So that's, unfortunately, on the sweet side, those are the only two that really pair good together. On the acidity, acidity can work with other different wines. It doesn't just have to be an acidic wine. Okay, let's go on to Barbera. So Barbera from Italy, it's from the Piedmont region. There are two places that it's most famous for. Barbera de Asti and Barbera de Alba. Two regions, hence Barbera is even in their name. They're so famous. But Barbera is grown everywhere in Italy. Barbera is a very popular grape in Italy. It is the third most planted red grape in Italy today. And anyways, Barbera, I love this variety. It has really good balance, not only as a wine, but as a vine too. It sets perfect amount of fruit. We never have to thin it. Its leaves are kind of tiny and have deep lobes, kind of like Cabernet Sauvignon. And they're kind of twiggy, and so you don't have to thin it either on the canopy. One interesting feature about Barbera is that if you take a leaf and you flip it over, and you look on the back side of it, it can be kind of hairy. It's got all this fuzz, like deep fuzz on the back of its leaves. And I was talking with the abbot one day, and he said, you know, I wonder if Barbera is, because I was telling him about the leaves, and he said, I wonder if Barbera is related to the word barbarian, which means bearded one. And I thought to myself, that's exactly got to be the connection. It's the bearded vine. It's a perfectly named variety. I have no idea if that connection is for reals or not, but interesting story. So Barbera, the bearded grape, as a wine though, it is all fruit. It is pure cherries. When we ferment this thing, these grapes in our facility, you come in the next morning, because all the doors are shut at night, and so when you open up those doors and the Barbera is at its peak ferment, the whole place smells like Bing cherries. I'm not even joking. It is powerful, beautiful, beautiful grape to work with. We don't age it a super long time in oak. It is all in oak for at least a year, probably more like a year and a quarter. And we put about 10% new American oak. So I'm gonna go ahead, let's look at the color. I'm getting off track on too many stories. So on the color, another little trick you can deduce from a red wine's color is if you look at the rim of the wine, If you see an electric color, that will give you a clue to its acidity level. If it's really electric red, like vibrant, it's probably got a really low pH and a fairly decent total acidity. And it can also tell you it's young as well, because when a wine ages, another clue to tell about its age is if that same rim is kind of turning brown, or brick red or garnet would probably be the first level, and then brick red, and then brown, and then finally you get to that tawny brown where the color is just falling, almost it's like water at the rim and the color is going towards the center. That only happens to old wine. So if you see that aging progression, you can kind of know it's kind of getting up the hill, over the hill, or definitely going downhill. This Barbera, it's young, it's vibrant, it's got a very low, it doesn't have a super low pH, kind of for a red, and I know it. This one's probably, or it's 3.48. And not that you guys really even care about that, but let's go into the food pairing because I am going to get off track again. We have the acidity. So like I said, I tasted these already. The acidity component goes really well with the Barbera. Acid with acid, great play. For this one, I would think of something with tomatoes, a tomato-based dish. Something that I love the saying, where it grows together, goes together. And if you think of where the wine is from, then think about its culinary foods in that area. And it's an amazing trick because it seems to always work out with wines and foods. And I kind of figure that after hundreds of years of farmers and winemakers, you know, working together, they kind of got an idea of not only what grows well in that region, but also how they interact with each other at your table. And so Piedmont, tomatoes, some pasta. You know, this wine would also really pair well with some salami, that fat element. And in fact, let's talk about the fat element. We have the olive oil here. That was another one that did an interesting play. The wine seemed softer and more mellow. It was less acidic with that fat component, and it really worked with a high acid wine. The other one that worked, it wasn't as good because I liked this one on the Tempranillo, but the umami also worked. So grilled vegetables, maybe some shellfish. You could do shellfish with this because it's got that high acidity, and that's another component that will work well. So anyways, that is your Barbera for you. Oh, you know what? Let's do a quick smell and taste. So I talked about the cherries. That's definitely on the nose. And the flavors, there's it's pretty tart. So it's got strawberries, raspberries, cherries, and a little bit of vanilla. And that's from that 10% American oak aging. All right, so Tempranillo, last but not least, we have our Tempranillo. Tempranillo, like I said, I have a little story about this grape. So Tempranillo, it means, it's from the root word temprana, which means early. This is a very early ripening red grape. But the connection that we have with Tempranillo is Leland Stanford's Grapevine Ranch, pre-Prohibition, late 1800s. He had a young worker by the name of Frederick Bioletti. This is a little history lesson for you. And Frederick, first job, young man, worked in Stanford's vineyards. And he actually later became California's first viticulture professor. And he became a professor at UC Berkeley. And That department, he started the first viticulture department in California, and it lasted a couple years, and then UC Davis opened, and they moved the department to UC Davis, so he transferred over there, started or continued that viticulture department, and he ended up traveling around the world, taking cuttings of lots of different vines, bringing it back to UC Davis's Library Vineyard. I've actually worked in the Library Vineyard, and it's amazing. It's got cuttings from hundreds of years ago, and Frederick was one of those people that started that Library Vineyard, and he brought Tempranillo. And since then, they cleaned up all the viruses out of it, and it has propagated throughout the United States. And so Frederick Bioletti must have been inspired to get on the grape growing career path from Leland Stanford's ranch. Now, when we planted it, we just thought it would grow really well in our region. We had no idea this little gem of a story actually had a connection to us. But when we figured it out and read all the books that Frederick Bioletti wrote, it's an interesting connection. And Tempranillo, it has a really great grape. It's famous in Spain, like I had said, from the Rioja region. Now, Rioja has some really high elevations in the northern part of its region, and then it goes all the way down to just a flat plateau area, all in the same AVA, basically. So anyways, Tempranillo, we grow it in Vina. It does very well. This is from the St. James block. I'm going to go ahead and look at the color. So this Tempranillo is a deep ruby color, ruby red. It's not as bright and electric color as the Barbera, but it is, and with that, I had told you that if it's electric in color, it's going to be high acid and a low pH. With this wine, this is probably a medium acid wine because it's still red, it's just not electric red. Another cool thing that you can tell about a red wine is its age. So you look at the rim, and if you see a slight garnet, you know it's got a little age on it. If you see a brick red, then you know it's definitely getting up there. If you get into the brown or tawny, you're probably over the hill. And but that's how you can tell how old the wines are, is they'll start changing color at the rim as well. So with the food pairing with this wine, the things that stood out to me the most was probably the salt. I really enjoyed the salt with this Tempranillo, and it's because it helped build its body. Tempranillo doesn't have really high tannins. And then let's go ahead and smell it. So on the smell, I get cherry, but it's kind of a different cherry than that Barbera cherry. This cherry is almost like a cordial cherry, or almost a little kind of fake cherry-esque. It also has a ton of barrel aromatics. It's got the clove and cinnamon and vanilla. A little bit like that baking spice that you can get from barrels. Tempranillo, we did about 25% new American oak on Tempranillo, so it's got a little more than Barbera. We age it a little bit longer. Rioja, they love to age their Tempranillos. They'll go to that Grand Reserva level of a 5-year-old aged, barrel aged, not even just bottle aged wine. And so Tempranillo, we only do about 2 years in the barrel and then 6 months in the bottle. So this is kind of the, I think it would be the Crianza style. But so it's a fairly youthful, but it's got some oak influence Tempranillo. Let's go ahead and taste it as well. So, beautiful wine. It's definitely not as acidic. It's got a softer, rounder feel than the Barbera. When I did the salt, it helped build the body, and it helped the tannins seem a little bit more subtle. So it kind of lessens some of those tannins. So that one worked really well. And then also the umami worked really well with this Tempranillo. I think it would do very good with any grilled vegetable dishes or grilled meats. You could even do, like if you think about the where it grows together, goes together motto, you think about paella. Paella would be great for this Tempranillo. And I would definitely focus more on a pork and maybe some of the spicy sausage or maybe some chorizo based paella that's got that nice crust in the big pan that you share with your whole family and friends. It's very fun to do a paella if you haven't done one before. I didn't mention the very last element that I haven't mentioned that I would be remiss to miss is about the spice. So spice is can be a little hard to pair. There's really only one type of wine that works really well with spicy food. It's usually going to be a little sweet, and it's also usually going to be lower in alcohol. So high alcohol wines and spice exacerbate the hotness, and so that's why you want that lower alcohol. And then the sweetness helps kind of extinguish the heat a little bit. And you don't need a lot of sweetness. It doesn't have to be super sweet unless it's super spicy, but just a little bit sweet and low alcohol. I'm thinking a Moscato. Moscato's perfect, low alcohol, a little bit of sweetness. In fact, we make a Moscato, so if you like Moscatos and you like spicy food, definitely gives you a reason to come visit us. And so yeah, so that's the food pairing. It's really simple. A lot of these elements you already have in your kitchen. You don't have to do the whole array. Just do some of the ones that are really fun, like the lemon and the salt, the umami, and I would just do those three if you want to keep it simple, and you'll be really impressed on how to direct your wine. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for having us. I hope you guys have a great celebration, and cheers to your holiday gala. Have a good one.